Imagine you are sitting across from someone in a high-stakes conversation. It could be a salary negotiation, tense discussion with a partner, or a critical meeting with a client. You have just delivered your main point. You laid out your argument perfectly. You presented the facts, you set your boundary, and you stop speaking. And then, nothing happens. The other person does not argue. They do not agree. They do not even nod. They simply look at you. Their expression completely unreadable, and they let the silence hang in the air. 1 second passes. It feels normal. 2 seconds pass. A slight tension builds in your chest. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. Suddenly, the silence becomes incredibly loud. It becomes a physical weight pressing down on you. Before you even realize what you are doing, you open your mouth again. You start explaining yourself. You soften your stance. You offer a compromise they never even asked for. You backtrack on your own boundary, systematically dismantling your own argument just to make the unbearable quiet go away. Why did you just do that? Why did you negotiate against yourself? You did not lose that argument because your facts were wrong. You lost because you fell into a psychological vacuum. You encountered someone who understands that in human interaction, power does not always belong to the person who speaks the loudest, or the person who has the most aggressive argument. Very often, absolute power belongs to the person who is the most comfortable with the silence. Welcome to the hidden architecture of human behavior. Today, we are going to deconstruct the exact psychological mechanisms behind silence. We will explore why your brain is hardwired to panic when the talking stops. How strategic silence controls the flow of information, and how manipulators weaponize the absence of words to break down your reality. Most importantly, you will learn how to turn this vacuum into your greatest tactical advantage. To understand why silence is so terrifying, we have to look away from modern conference rooms and look back at our evolutionary biology. The human brain is a prediction machine. It is constantly scanning the environment for social feedback. For our ancestors, belonging to the group was not just a matter of emotional comfort, it was a matter of biological survival. If you were isolated from the tribe, you died. Therefore, we evolved to rely heavily on continuous, predictable streams of social data, nods, verbal agreements, facial expressions, and conversation. These are the signals that tell our nervous system, you are safe. You are accepted. You belong here. When someone abruptly withdraws that social data, they are not just being quiet. They are triggering an ancient alarm system inside your brain. In psychology, silence introduces what we call ambiguity. And the human brain despises ambiguity. When faced with an ambiguous social cue, like a blank stare and zero verbal response, your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, immediately assumes the worst-case scenario. It interprets the lack of approval as a signal of impending rejection. This creates a phenomenon we can call phantom guilt. When the other person goes silent, your cognitive load skyrockets. Your brain starts frantically searching for a reason for the silence. Because you have no new information from them, you are forced to look inward. You start reviewing your own words. Did I sound too aggressive? Was my demand unreasonable? Did I offend them? The silence acts as a mirror, but a distorted one that only reflects your own insecurities. The person who initiates the silence does not have to attack your argument. They do not have to find flaws in your logic. They simply create a psychological vacuum, and they wait for your own anxiety to fill it. Nature abhors a vacuum, and human nature will fill a conversational vacuum with whatever it takes to restore harmony, even if it means surrendering your own power, lowering your price, or apologizing for something you did not do. This is why, in any power dynamic, the person who speaks first after a strategic pause is usually the one who loses leverage. The speaker is the one expending energy, revealing information, and seeking validation. The silent observer is the one evaluating, withholding validation, and maintaining absolute control over the frame of the interaction. Now that we understand the biological trap of the vacuum, let us look at how this is applied in a high-stakes, real-world environment. Silence is the ultimate tool for creating information asymmetry, a state where one party holds significantly more actionable intelligence than the other. Let us look at a specific scenario. Imagine a project manager at a software company sitting in a tense virtual meeting with a difficult client. The client is aggressive, demanding a massive discount on the final invoice. To justify this demand, the client claims the system is flawed and prone to crashing when handling their data. The client says, "Your system is completely unstable. It took 5 minutes to process our latest data batch. It's unacceptable and we aren't paying full price." The project manager looks at their own internal logs. The data batch the client uploaded was exactly 144 rows of simple text. In the world of database management, 144 rows is microscopic. It is a fraction of a millisecond of processing time. It is biologically impossible for 144 rows of text to crash a modern cloud server unless the client did something disastrously wrong on their end. Or they are simply lying to manufacture leverage for a discount. The average person, reacting on instinct, would immediately jump to the defensive. They would share their screen. They would pull up the server logs. They would explain the technical architecture, outline the processing speeds, then passionately argue that the system is perfect and the 144 rows of data are harmless. But doing that is a strategic mistake. By arguing, the project manager validates the client's complaint as something worthy of a debate. They are giving the client the power to judge their technical explanation. Instead, our project manager uses a technique known in negotiation psychology as the flinch and pause. The manager looks at the client through the camera. They do not smile. They do not frown. They simply hold eye contact, and they remain completely, absolutely silent. 5 seconds pass. 10 seconds. The psychological weight shifts entirely onto the client. The client just made a bold, aggressive, and highly inaccurate claim. By not responding, the project manager refuses to accept the burden of proof. The silence essentially says, "I know exactly what 144 rows of data looks like. You know exactly what 144 rows of data looks like. I am going to sit here and let you listen to how ridiculous your own statement sounds." Under the crushing weight of that silence, the client's confidence fractures. the information asymmetry works against them. Because the manager did not reveal their hand, the client doesn't know how much the manager knows. The client begins to backtrack. Well, the client stammers. Breaking the silence, maybe it wasn't the system crashing, but my internet was slow. Regardless, we still want to discuss the pricing. Without speaking a single word, the project manager neutralized a manufactured crisis, exposed a bluff, and forced the opponent to retreat from their aggressive framing. They maintained their status, protected their information, and let the opponent defeat themselves. That is the tactical application of the vacuum. However, to truly understand human behavior, we must examine both the strategic light and the psychological dark. While silence can be a brilliant tool for establishing boundaries and managing negotiations, it is also one of the most destructive weapons in the arsenal of a manipulator. We must draw a very clear line between strategic silence and what psychologists call the silent treatment or ostracism. Strategic silence is a pause. It is a moment of reflection, refusal to engage in an irrational argument, or a tool to prompt the other person to think. It is about controlling the flow of a conversation. The silent treatment, on the other hand, is an act of psychological violence. It is not about controlling a conversation, it is about controlling a person through emotional starvation. When a toxic partner, a narcissistic boss, or a manipulative family member uses the silent treatment, they are engaging in a process of erasure. If you displease them, they do not just argue with you, they pretend you no longer exist. They look past you. They refuse to acknowledge your presence in the room. They withhold the basic human recognition that you are alive and worthy of communication. The psychological damage this causes is profound. Neuroscience has shown that the brain processes social rejection and ostracism in the exact same neural pathways that process physical pain. To the human brain, being subjected to the silent treatment physically hurts. The manipulator knows this intuitively. They use the silent treatment as a form of coercive control. They are conditioning you. They are teaching you that their communication, their love, and their approval are conditional, and the penalty for disobedience is absolute isolation. The goal of weaponized silence is to break your will. The manipulator wants you to become so desperate for a return to normalcy that you will accept any terms. Apologize for things you did not do, and abandon your own boundaries just to get them to speak to you again. When silence is used as a boundary, it protects you. When silence is used as a punishment, it is designed to destroy your sense of self-worth. Recognizing the difference is the first and most crucial step in psychological self-defense. So, how do you navigate this? How do you protect yourself from the psychological vacuum? Whether it is being used by a tough negotiator across a boardroom table, or a manipulator in your own home, the answer lies in mastering your own internal reactivity. You must learn to become comfortable in the void. When you encounter silence, your first instinct will be a rising tide of anxiety. Your chest will tighten, your mind will race, and the urge to speak will feel overwhelming. This is your biological programming telling you to fix the social disconnect. Do not fight the physical sensation, but absolutely refuse to act on it. I want you to use a mental model called the anchor and the storm. The storm is the silence itself, and the chaotic energy of the other person trying to pressure you. The storm is your own anxiety telling you to apologize, to explain, to fill the gap. The anchor is your physical presence in the present moment. When the silence hits, do not look away, but do not stare aggressively. Maintain a calm, soft focus. Ground yourself physically. Feel your feet on the floor. Take a slow, imperceptible breath in, and an even slower breath out. If you are in a negotiation and you have made your offer, and they go silent, you must mirror the pause. Let them sit in the silence they created. If a minute goes by, let a minute go by. Remind yourself, I have said what needed to be said. The ball is in their court. I do not need to rescue them from the awkwardness. If you are dealing with a manipulator using the silent treatment as a punishment, the defense is slightly different. The manipulator expects you to chase them. They expect you to beg for their attention. The ultimate defense against the silent treatment is absolute, unbothered non-reactivity. You must adopt the mentality of a gray rock. You become as uninteresting and emotionally unresponsive as a stone. You do not ask what is wrong. You do not plead. You simply go about your day, completely unaffected by their attempt to erase you. When a manipulator realizes that their silence is not causing you pain, when they see that you are perfectly content functioning without their approval, the weapon loses its power. The vacuum collapses. They are forced to either resume normal communication or escalate their behavior, which only further exposes their toxic motives. Silence is a canvas. For the anxious, it is a canvas where they paint their worst fears and insecurities. For the manipulative, it is a canvas where they try to erase your reality. But for the strategic mind, silence is a tool of profound clarity. It is the space where the truth reveals itself. The next time the talking stops, do not rush to fill the void. Breathe. Anchor yourself. And watch very closely what the other person does when they realize you are no longer afraid of the quiet.